The Bayou Greenways initiative has the potential to be one of the most transformative projects in Houston's history. Hi everyone, I'm Ansley Jones, and today I'm going to be discussing the implications of the Bayou Greenways initiative, specifically looking at the social effects, since this is the social dimensions of Climate Change Forum. So first, I'm going to be discussing what is walkable urbanism and discuss why it's needed in Houston. Then I will go into the specifics of the Bayou Greenway initiative, with the business case for the project, how transportation might be affected, how successful I think this initiative will be, what potential downfalls could result, and lastly, what we can learn from other cities. All right, so walkable urbanism is a growing movement away from detached single-family homes that characterized suburbs and a movement toward more mixed-use development, amenities, population density, public transit. With a combination of all of these, this is the ideal quality of life for both millennials and baby boomers alike these days. So now we are seeing all of these urban revitalization projects, which essentially are working to restore all of these factors I just listed in an attempt to lead to less sprawl, reduce our dependence on automobiles, and in the future we'll have positive environmental and public health benefits. So looking at Houston, this is one of the most sprawling cities in the United States, which has caused very low density and high segregation by income. Of course, we're very dependent on our cars, which also leads to dependence on parking lots. I included this graphic just because I thought it was pretty astounding that in America the average is 2.5 public or parking spaces per person, but in Houston it's 30. And as civil engineers in here might know, parking spaces or parking lots are huge impervious surfaces, which leads to environmental disasters such as the urban heat island effect, more runoff with pollution, and so on. So, in the future, Houston needs to embrace smart growth, which the American Planning Association defines as supporting choice and opportunity by promoting efficient and sustainable land development, promoting patterns that optimize prior infrastructure investments, and consuming less land that is otherwise available for agriculture, open space, natural systems, and rural lifestyles. So as I said, some of the problems Houston struggles with are flooding, the heat island effect, air and water pollution, and on the urban planning side, transit, affordable housing, and gentrification. So really what it comes down to is parking lots versus green spaces. So now I'm going to show a quick video. That will explain the Bayou Greenways initiative.
Parks Bayou is really something that is so special.
What they're trying to do is create a bigger green space for us to enjoy.
Every neighborhood in Houston has a bayou. It's there. It's part of the design you see. This is natural green space that we've ignored for far too long.
Cities with parks have healthier, more engaged citizens.
As an avid park user, I couldn't think of a more important movement to transform our city with the Parks by You initiative.
For the future, we want Houstonians to be active and lively.
Help me like.
We love the Bayou Trail. We spend all of our free time on it. If they were connected, we could pick them up at any point. We could ride and go until he's exhausted like he is now.
I think this is a unique feature for the entire city of Houston.
What it does is allow communities to mix a strong city of interaction between the citizens of the city.
For many years, we've talked about turning this green space into parkland, bike trails, hiking trails, places for people to go and enjoy this great city.
We're creating a
All right, so as you may have gathered from the video, the Bayou Greenways initiative is going to be a beautiful project to connect all of the bayous in Houston with 150 new miles of trails, which enhances connectivity in the city. It provides walkability by providing safe access to the city center from 75% of the city, that is with the combination of public transit and trails. And it'll put 1.3 million Houstonians within 1.5 miles of a park. As for the environmental side, it will lead to greater resiliency as it incorporates green infrastructure. So I worked with Richard Johnson, who, I spoke with him about his involvement in the project, and he helped with the environmental planning side. And he told me about something they used to make the business case for the project called the ROI of cool, which describes the return on investment based on several both active and passive benefits. They looked at recreation, public health, reduction in traffic and car accidents. And for passive benefits, they looked into ecosystem services, carbon sequestration, clean air and water, and property values. And what they found is that this project will have a payback of 4 years. So the Bayou Greenways really has the potential to change what transportation looks like in Houston. There are already a lot of efforts underway in doing so. When Mayor Anise Parker was in office, she implemented the Complete Streets Executive Order, which called for making streets safer and more accessible for all users, not just drivers. And now during Sylvester Turner's term, he has been focusing on transportation and has called for a changing paradigm. So some other efforts are with public transport. The Metro has seen a bus revamp as of August. The system was entirely made more efficient with the help of actually a Rice alum who saw inefficiencies and decided to help change the system in order to serve more users. In addition, light rail projects are working on expanding, and there are more park and ride centers so that people in suburbs can also take advantage of transit. As for biking, I think that is one of the more promising aspects of transportation for Houston's future. There are a lot of great plans going on, such as the Houston Bike Plan, which is trying to make Houston move from, right now we have a bronze designation in the America's bike-friendly cities, and we're trying to get to the gold level. And this will be achieved by making streets safer with more comfortable bike lanes, enhancing connectivity to major job centers, and doing more with our bike share program, Recycle, which is currently expanding from 29 stations up to 100, with several being on Rice campus. So that's pretty exciting. And I think the Bayou Greenways initiative is really going to enhance biking, because with all of the new trails that are going to run east, west in the city, they will line up with trails that already exist along the utility corridors, which typically run north-south. So a grid will result, so more biking will really be possible. However, there definitely are barriers to change. I think the biggest one is the culture of privatism, which reigns supreme. This essentially is the suburban way of life. People enjoy their big open spaces and the ability to drive their own car wherever they want to go. And so maybe this new compact lifestyle with more social interaction isn't really up everyone's alley. Some other issues are that we have a highway expansion program going on right now. Weather will always be an issue people will complain about for biking and walking through the city. But with Mayor Parker's Complete Streets executive order, she did call for more tree-lined streets, which will make streets at least shadier and be more comfortable to walk in. And safety concerns are always present, but I think the bike plan is really a great move for biking, easier to do in the city. All right, so when you think of Houston, what comes to mind?
Sprawl.
Yeah. I want to focus on traffic. So the Kinder Institute, their annual survey found that the #1 problem Houstonians have with this city is traffic. And something that I found really appalling was that Houston is 3 times more likely to have traffic-related accidents than New York City. And that's really terrible, but hopefully with all of these efforts, such as the Complete Streets Executive Order, the Bayou Greenways, and the Houston Bike Plan, we are on a path to changing this. And I just want to say, with this new age of globalization, where people really have the choice to work wherever they want these days, cities need to compete with quality of life issues. So by enhancing our quality of life features, transforming Houston from a gray city covered in parking lots to one covered in parks will help change our reputation. All right, so how successful will the Bayou Greenways initiative be? According to a study in Canada, parks with paved trails were 26 times more likely than parks without paved trails to be used for physical activity. Another example is that in Australia, when they advertise a new rail trail, this led to a significant increase in the amount of physical activity of its residents. The amount of biking increased from 17 to 28 minutes per week. And a little less optimistic, but some studies from Minneapolis and North Carolina found that new rail trails had no effect on biking or walking for transportation. So this leads me to be a little cautious in saying that this will be a totally transformative project, because I think as it will have positive public health benefits in terms of physical activity, I'm not sure how it will really change how much people commute with these trails. All right, so now I'm going to be looking at the environmental and public health factors that support this project. So as I hinted at earlier, impervious areas lead to environmental damage. So by implementing low-impact development that breaks up the impervious area, we can reduce runoff and reduce the pollutant load within that runoff. Another cool study was that the National Medical Expenditure Survey found that for every $1 spent on trails, $3 can be saved in medical costs. And a study in Utah found that people living in walkable areas tend to weigh 8 pounds less than their counterparts in non-walkable areas. Now on the social side, a researcher from UC Berkeley was looking into these transit-oriented development schemes. That's another buzzword for walkable urbanism. And what they found is that the most important factors for reducing car ownership are the number of available bus stops and also the scarcity of parking. The author of the study suggested looking into all of the factors of the TOD playbook, which are less parking, more useful amenities like grocery stores, and then developing in the already developed core near downtown. And another study that looked at social capital in the built environment found that people are more likely to know their neighbors, trust each other, participate politically, and engage socially when they're in walkable neighborhoods. Now on the economic side, the NYC Department of Transportation found that businesses near bike lanes have much greater sales than businesses not in proximity to bike lanes. At Portland State University, it was found that cyclists actually spend less than their driving counterparts on individual trips, but they tend to return more often and spend more overall. And the University of Cincinnati found that home buyers are willing to pay a premium of up to $9,000 to be living within 1,000 feet of their rails to trails line, which is similar to our project. So, with all of these great benefits, what could possibly go wrong? Gentrification. Gentrification is when there's an influx of wealthier people into deteriorated areas, which tends to cause cause displacement of those who can no longer afford to pay rent. And so, since the Bayou Greenways initiative is aiming to be democratic as it touches every demographic, they need to really focus on how to actually satisfy all of Houston citizens. So some tips provided by this article, Green Urbanism, Balancing Environmental Justice with Gentrification, are that we should plan for rent stabilization measures and affordable housing provisions, design projects that fit with the original character of the area, and implement small-scale projects like community gardens. So as I hinted, Houston needs to focus on meeting the needs of all of its people. So the Houston Parks and Recreation had a master plan park survey, which claimed that the majority of Houstonians wanted connectivity with its parks. However, the majority of their sample was white and had an income of over $75,000. So some researchers from Rice actually wanted to look into this, and they did another survey of African Americans and Latinos to learn more about their priorities. And what they found were that they were more concerned about upgrading recreational or leisure facilities, creating better bathrooms, water fountains, etc. And connectivity was actually the least of their concerns. So really for the Bayou Greenways initiative to be effective, they first need to look into satisfying the needs of everyone and to maintain parks that are already in existence. Alright, so now what can we learn from other cities? I looked into the Atlanta Beltline project since I'm from there, and I wanted to learn what they had done in terms of keeping affordable housing. And one of their strategies was designating 15% of the investment for affordable housing units. And they also used this tax increment financing, which is similar to the tax increment reinvestment zones we have in Houston, which essentially capture value and use the money to fund streetscape improvements and other economic development strategies for low-income areas. I looked into this really interesting study about how early gentrification can result from these types of projects, and what they found was that just as early as 2005, which was when the Beltline project was first gaining media attention, property values started to rise, and over a 5-year period, areas within an eighth of a mile of the Beltline had property values raised by 160%. And since this is such a huge amount, I think it is really crucial that urban planners get involved in the process early and start implementing policies from the beginning to preserve affordable housing. So looking at what some other cities are doing, Seattle has been very instrumental in decreasing car ownership. They have a program called the Commute Trip Reduction, which basically businesses have incentivized their employees to arrive using alternate modes of transportation. And now a lot of central city developments are also encouraging alternative modes by not even providing parking spaces, but instead giving their residents transit passes and car and bike share memberships. And this has resulted in only 31% of their residents driving to work alone, which is pretty significant. And now Miami has followed suit, and they are reducing their parking requirements, which will make it more affordable to build mid-sized mixed-use development. And as shown in this graph here, this just shows how different types of parking structures can influence the affordability of the development itself and really, really have an impact. So, if we have time, I have one more video. So.
Just need you to
Okay, that's
give
fine.
you time for 2 questions.
Yeah.
Really good presentation.
Thank you.
So, do you know why Houston has a much higher rate of accidents, traffic accidents than New York does?
Well, the article I read about was referring to this one area of Houston. I forgot where it is, but it's an area with like high turn and not very much pedestrian friendly like crosswalks or anything, and that's where a lot of these accidents are occurring. But I'm not sure exactly why we have that significant amount of traffic accidents. Yeah.
You said you're really kind of doubtful of people switching to the bike lanes, like to bike trails, like for commuting. Do you know if there's any sort of like governmental push, like a PR push, like make people like consider doing this once like the Bayou 2020 project is done? Like, you know if there's any sort of like outreach or something of like to encourage kind of like a transfer to biking?
I'm not totally sure. I do know the Houston Bike Plan is probably the biggest project right now in terms of getting public support. I don't know,
Okay.
Richard might know more about that since he's worked on bike.
Well, going back to Ryan's question, we too were somewhat doubtful that they would be used heavily by commuting until there was a point in time where there was a well-developed network, and in a lot of key locations we had solved the so-called last mile problem, which is how do you get from that network to your workplace. So there are specific areas where connectivity was important, say to the Texas Medical Center, into downtown. Like, you know, I live in the Meyerland area and I'm kind of worrying about that right now, seeing the rain. But, you know, I can ride to pretty close to Rice, but then that last, you know, half a mile getting up to Rice is a challenge. So those are the locations where if that becomes easier, you may see more commuting. But otherwise, we did envision quite a bit of recreational use,
Okay.
which was a point that, you know, Ainsley made in their presentation.
Thank you. Thank you all.